G.T. Thompson, Vice Chair of the committee, to open us with a prayer. G.T.
Chairman, thank you. Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the rest of the night. We thank you for this Lord's Day morning, Lord. We thank you for just so apparent being here where we are in New York and in the middle of all of your glory, Lord. Just the beautiful surroundings. This morning, Lord, as we gather, we ask special blessings over those families that work so hard each and every day to feed us and to clothe us and to provide us building materials and energy, Lord. So we give thanks for how you meet our needs, and specifically for agriculture this morning. So now I just ask you bless those who are in attendance. So we're thankful for safe traveling mercies as they've arrived here. We just ask bless this proceedings as we have an opportunity, those of us who have been given us the honor of serving in agriculture in Washington, to hear, to listen, and to learn from the folks that are here. So we just ask to bless these proceedings, and certainly traveling mercies as everyone here in attendance returns home. And I pray this in the name of my Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, J.T. We've asked Alan Graylick, who's the president of FFA chapter, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We've asked our host, Marion Terenzio, to come give a few opening remarks. Let me first off, before Marion speaks, apologize for the arrangements. This makes the five of us look like royalty, and we hate that. We'd much prefer to be down at the same level as everybody, but anyway, so please accept our apologies in advance for looking down on you like a bunch of buzzards. So appreciate that. But Marion, your comments.
Thank you. Well, welcome. Welcome to the State University of New York College of Agriculture and Technology at Cobleskill. On behalf of the college community, it is my pleasure to welcome the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Agriculture, specifically Congressman Conaway, the chair, Congressman Peterson, the ranking member, Congressman Thompson, the vice chairman, Congressman Tinney, and of course, our hometown Congressman Faso. I would like to welcome and thank the staff of the Agriculture Committee for their work in coordinating this listening tour, and for Evelyn Davies and our staff who worked very closely with everyone to make this happen. We have honored guests in the audience. We have the Dean of the School of Agriculture at Cornell, Dean Catherine Bohr. We have Mr. David Fisher, President of the New York State Farm Bureau, Mr. Leo McAllister, Supervisor of the town of Cobleskill, the Cabinet of SUNY Cobleskill, thank you for coming in, and of course our neighbors, our friends, and our partners. We are honored to co-host this event, and we think it is particularly fitting that the listening tour is here. There are three quick reasons I'd like to give for that reason. SUNY Cobleskill has been preparing future farmers, policymakers, innovators, and advocates for over 100 years with a clear, consistent, and relevant mission. It aligns with many features of the Farm Bill, and most directly with the establishment of the non-land grant Colleges of Agriculture designation that began in 2008 and reauthorized in 2014. It is my pleasure to say that SUNY Cobleskill was one of the two non-land grant institutions that received the top award of $750,000 this year. And oh, by the way, Congressman Conaway, Texas Tech is the other one. Using applied learning as a framework, we focus on agriculture-related capacity building, creating renewable resources, finding production-oriented solutions, and building a workforce. We've been widely recognized internationally and nationally. One example is a headline in an international magazine that called, quote, SUNY Cobleskill, one of 5 colleges of agriculture in the country producing graduates who will safeguard the future of the world, unquote. This may sound like a bold assertion. It is, and it's true. The second reason, we are preparing future farmers, most of whom will not be coming from family farms. We've established education pathways with local school districts through which students can earn high school diploma and associate's degree. Last semester, 1,000 students were enrolled in that program. In addition, we established a partnership to create a P-Tech high school, which focuses solely on agriculture. Next year, a group of 50 students will start attending SUNY Cobleskill. And the third reason, This year, SUNY Cobleskill launched the Institute for Rural Vitality in collaboration with regional partners with the purpose to enhance community and economic vitality in rural New York. The Institute addresses the region's most pressing issues to develop and enact sustainable solutions. Activities range from research to workforce development, business startups, and community and cultural celebrations. The constant feature in this work is coalition building among faculty, students, and community. And one example of the Institute is that the Albany Law School is providing free legal services and education programming and advocacy on behalf of our rural constituents. And so, like you, who are crafting the Farm Bill, we support farms and farmers. Like you, we appreciate programs that open markets to producers. Like you, we use our resources to help farms thrive. Like you, we address issues related to future food supply. Today, we are pleased to assist in the reauthorization process of the Farm Bill and will continue to reshape rural America. Thank you, Congressman Peterson.
Thank you, Marion. Now turn to our ranking member, Colin Peterson, for his remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we're glad to be here today and look forward to the advice we're going to get. I'm Colin Peterson. I represent the western, about half of Minnesota, all from Canada almost to Iowa. We're one of the biggest ag districts in the country. We're number one in sugar beets and sugar and turkeys. We're big in corn and soybeans, and we have a lot of dairy farmers. And I've been in Congress for a while. Some people say too long, but this is my sixth I think it's my sixth farm bill. So we're pleased to be here, and we're looking forward to closing out our listening sessions here in New York and then getting to work and getting this bill done. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Colin, thank you. And now turn to the, our host, Congressman John Faso, to introduce himself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I very much appreciate your bringing the Ag Committee here, and very much appreciate the work that you're doing on behalf of all of us in America concerned about agriculture. Very much appreciate our Vice Chairman, Glenn Thompson from Pennsylvania, being here, my colleague Claudia Tenney from the district just to the west, and Colin Peterson, who is a legend in agricultural circles, especially those focused on the Congress and state legislatures around the country. Yeah, he's a former chairman of the Agriculture Committee and serves our country very admirably as our ranking member on the committee. So it's great to see all of you here. We look forward to your comments and very much appreciate the time that you've taken on this Columbus Day to be with us as we consider the issues that are facing our country and agriculture for the 2018 Farm Bill. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
GT.
Well, once again, good morning, everyone. I'm Congressman G.T. Thompson, Pennsylvania 5th Congressional District. As I was driving up from home, my home is in the very center of the state, near another great land-grant university, Penn State. I crossed the Pennsylvania-New York line, but felt very much at home with the surroundings that we're in. The average size of farms that you have is largely what I represent, and that 24% of the landmass of Pennsylvania that I represent. I'm appreciative to the chairman to provide me the honor of this term. I'm in my fifth term, but this term allowing me to serve as vice chair of the full Agriculture Committee. In the past, chaired the Conservation, Forestry, Watershed, Soils Subcommittee, and today I serve as Subcommittee Chairman for Nutrition. Because after all, farmers feed and nutrition matters. So it's great to be with you today.
All right, Claudia.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here. I'm Claudia Tenney. I represent NY22, which Mr. Faso indicated was to the west, although for 4 years I represented Otsego, Delaware, Orange, Ulster, and Sullivan County in my assembly district. So I didn't quite get to Cobleskill, but my coming down Route 20 today was really a beautiful drive and a reminder of going past some of the area that I used to represent. I come from a family that has a lot of dairy farmers and farmers in it. All those dairy farmers have now closed their farms and turned to beef and turned to raising crops, unfortunately, because of many of the issues. But NY22 is one of the top dairy producers in the region. It's 8 counties, as I said, just to the west. I'm not actually on the Agricultural Committee. I'm on the Financial Services Committee. But there are important issues dealing with credit on financial services. Dairy is really important. Obviously, it's part of my family, but it's part of my district. And I just wanted to be here to hear what you have to say when we vote on this very important bill. And some of the issues will be affected in financial services. So I really appreciate you all being here. It's really important that we hear from you. And I just want to thank the chairman and the ranking member and everyone for being willing to come all the way out here to Cobleskill, where it's really important to hear from you. And so you get to express your opinions to some of the most important people making decisions about your industry. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much.
So, Claudia, thank you. To each of you in the audience, thank you very much for sharing this morning with us. We appreciate that. Marianne, thank you again for opening the school to us. You got a lot of folks working today that today would have otherwise been a holiday. The 5 of us work most federal holidays, and so it's not, but your folks didn't. And so thank you for having them here as well. And again, each one of you that have come to share with us this morning, we certainly appreciate that. We'll have Mr. Timothy Moore will be the moderator this morning. And Timothy is the Dean of the School of Agriculture and Natural Resources here at SUNY Cobleskill. And I want to thank all of you for coming. The name of this event is a listening session. We are going to listen, unlike a hearing where we bring in experts and then we challenge each other as to who knows most about the subject matter, us, the member, or the expert. This morning we're going to listen to the folks who are affected by the programs and policies that we put in place. So thank you for sharing that with us this morning. We appreciate it. You're living the hard times that production agriculture has experienced over the last 4 years. A 50% drop in farm income during that time frame, the worst since the Depression. And so it's against that backdrop that my colleagues and I will be trying to craft a farm bill for 2018 that will then set in place the safety net that's available for production agriculture and the nutrition program that will provide a very important SNAP program for our country over that next 5-year period. This is our 6th listening session around the country. We've had great responses, another good crowd this morning, and I, again, appreciate that for coming out. But you're not going to hear much from us. We're going to listen to what you have to say, and that's the purpose of this. It's being transcribed. This will be a part of the record for the committee and how we put together the Farm Bill. And I'm hopeful that we hear from a wide variety of issues that cover in the jurisdiction of the Farm Bill. So I expect we'll hear obviously from dairy folks, which dominate this area. We'll hear from the SNAP people and food banks and rural development issues and research issues. All those issues we need to hear and get your perspective on as to how we can do a better job of crafting the Farm Bill with relatively limited resources to spread around across all the various things that we're trying to cope with. So thank you. You're going to be an integral part of helping us get our job done properly. And again, I apologize for looking down on you. That's not really my style and my colleague's style, but again, thank you and thank you to the school. So with that, Timothy Moore will set the framework and the ground rules for how we're going to run the bringing folks up, and we look forward to hearing from you. Let's be respectful of each other. There may be some differences of opinion between speakers. Let's listen respectfully as most folks in rural America respect each other's differences of opinion without being disrespectful. So thank you for that in advance. So Timothy, Tim, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to just talk a little bit about the rules we're going to follow today. For some of you who have already done this, fill out a speaking card and hand it to the staff in the aisle. As the moderator, I'll call each person to the microphone one at a time. We'd like you to keep your comments to 2 minutes on Farm Bill topics only. At about 15 seconds before your time expires, I'm going to start giving you a hand signal like this. So please be courteous and stick to the 2 minutes. If we run out of time today and you don't have a chance to share all that you wanted to, additional comments may be emailed to the address on the speaking card, houseaglistens@mail.house.gov. So what we're going to do is there's 2 microphones in the front. I'm going to call one speaker up, and then I'm also going to call the next speaker up so that there'll always be one person speaking and one person working their way to the microphone. That way we won't lose any time waiting for people to come to the microphone. So if we're ready, let's get started. Our first speaker will be David Fisher. He's the president of New York Farm Bureau. And then followed after Mr. Fisher, we'll have Dean Boer from Cornell University at the other microphone.
Good morning. I'd like to thank the chairman and Mr. Faso for sponsoring this event and bringing the Ag Committee to New York. As you know, New York is the second most diverse ag state in our production of different commodities, and we appreciate your time today. Farm Bureau has three overarching goals. One is no further cuts in Farm Bill spending to the ag side. As we took, ag and conservation took about $26 billion in cuts in the last Farm Bill. We'd like to not see it split between farm and nutrition. Both work together and need to continue to be together. We'd like to have a good Farm Bill passed in a timely manner so we don't have to rely on some of the expiration potentials as we did with the 2014 Farm Bill. Being a number 3 dairy state, we'd like some changes to the margin protection plan if that's possible, or alternatives. Due to grain cost differences and differences in basis in the Northeast, sometimes it put us at a severe disadvantage. One of the options would be to increase the cap on LGM, dairy LGM margin, which is an option, or continue to look at the revenue protection program that's being proposed. Whole farm revenue protection program as a pilot is very helpful for some of our diversified farms. It still is a little cumbersome, and we'd like that to remain as a pilot so that it would be available for USDA, who's been very cooperative in working with some of our specialty crops on insurance programs or needs. The main commodity programs of ARC and PLC, or crop insurance, we support as a foundation for a good safety net for those areas. And the working lands programs of EQIP and CSP over land retirement conservation programs. As keeping farmland in production should be our major goal. There's times when in the Northeast, some of the set-aside programs pay more rent than what is competitive in our areas. So it's put farmers at a disadvantage to the government, and we don't like to see that. We continue to support a large number of rural development, research, and commodity-specific benefits in the Farm Bill, especially our ag education, extension, and research programs. We value our land-grant institution in New York, and it's put us at the forefront of a lot of the research and projects that put New York agriculture at the forefront of a lot of different commodities. Thank you for your time.
So, Dean, just a second. You're going to have 2 minutes to talk. Trust us, we feel thanked. So don't waste any of your time thanking us for being here. We're on your payroll, we're doing our work, and so you don't need to thank us. Collectively, we feel thanked. So just spend your time talking to us about what's going on.
Before Dean Boer starts, I'd like to ask Neil Ray from Agrimark to come down. Dean Boer?
Okay. I'm Catherine Boer. I'm Dean of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at Cornell University in a 3rd-generation farm family in New York's southern tier. And welcome here today. I am here this morning to speak about the importance of agricultural research for innovation and for prosperity in rural America, and for the role of research in striving toward food security for all of our citizens. Central to our mission in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences is to provide our states and our nation's farmers with research-based information and tools to be innovative, to be efficient, importantly, to be economically viable, thereby ensuring that our nation has an adequate, a safe, affordable, and wholesome food supply. Agricultural research has a foundational role in spurring innovation and prosperity for rural America. A 2010 University of California Davis report showed that each dollar spent by the USDA on agricultural research and development returned over $33 in economic impact. That's an amazing return on investment. $1 investment, $33 in economic impact and return, with the greatest benefit focused on ensuring that our communities have access to healthy food. Right here in the state of New York, research at Cornell's College of Agriculture and Life Sciences returns dollars straight to our farmers' pockets. For example, our research creates new technologies and new plant varieties that are ideally suited for the growing conditions right here in New York. That includes, for example, the grape known as Cayuga White, which alone generates $26 million annually for our state's grape growers. But that long-standing bargain between the land-grant system, and Cornell is the land-grant institution for the state of New York, and our federal government has become frayed. USDA annual research expenditures have stagnated for the past 2 decades at roughly $2 billion annually. But at this same time, the pace of technological change and global competition has left our farmers seeking financial sustainability. We already talked about that drop in farm income. Meanwhile, we've seen the National Institutes of Health research expenditures grow by 135%. USDA research dollars have had a relative decline of 25% over these last 2 decades. Even if Congress maintains our 2014 Farm Bill levels of research funding, the U.S. has already slipped from our position as the world leader in food and agricultural research. China has outpaced us in public support for agriculture research and development since 2009. Brazil and Argentina now outspend us on agricultural R&D entirely. Our New York and U.S. farmers are now at a competitive disadvantage in a rapidly changing world. In fact, capacity funds for research and extension, in addition to competitive ag R&D funding, in the research title of the last Farm Bill were less than 2% of the total expenditures of the entire Farm Bill program. If our U.S. is to meet our nation's and our world's looming food security challenges, that is feeding 9 billion or more people in this century, and to ensure, and this is so important for the people in this room, that farming is a financially viable way of life, our next Farm Bill must increase its commitment to capacity funds and to the research title. We also need new pathways to fill funding gaps. One innovation in the 2014 Farm Bill was the formation of the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research, acronym FFAR, but pronounced FAR. That foundation is required to match every one of its public dollars with non-federal funding. And in this way, FAR is building unique public-private partnerships to bring more resources to critical research needs in agriculture. I urge you to ensure that funding for FAR is included in the next Farm Bill. Now, in summary, please recall that our current investment in capacity and research funds is less than 2% of the current Farm Bill appropriation. If we double research expenditures in the next Farm Bill, we'll still be at less than 4%. So I urge you to consider that. Such an increase is essential to the innovation that our farm families need and deserve to continue feeding our nation in the years to come. Thank you.
Great. Up next will be Eric Ooms, and now the microphone is to Mr. Ray.
Good morning. Thank you. I am here today with my wife, Carol. She's my friend and confidant, but to our business, she's our CFO. We milk 250 Holsteins in Washington County, which is 21st District, Lisa Stefanik's district. We've been in the dairy business quite a while. Our children are 7th generation. We have graduates, a daughter and a son-in-law are graduates of Cobleskill, and another son is with us in the business. I'm board chairman of Agrimark. We have about 1,000 members in New York and Vermont, all dairy producers, proud owners of the famous Cabot brand. I'm also been elected as a director to NMPF and serve on as an officer of National Milk Producers Federation. And with that, I was chosen to be on the Economic Policy Committee, which oversees the direction that we would like the committee to take with MPP. We have several options that we'd like you to consider. Certainly one is restore the 10% that we lost when we got the first Farm Bill in. Would make a big difference on our feed costs. We also would like to see improved participation with lower premiums. You may know or you may not, in 2015 we had over 50% participation in New York. This past year we had 3%. In Vermont, over 50% in 2015. This past year, 2%. We need to have this provision to work for dairy farmers. Also a possibility of monthly statements for rather than bi-monthly determinations, and a fourth quarter sign-up. I also briefly would like to mention trade. I know the committee met with Canadian dairy farmers. We at National Milk as officers met with the Canadian dairy farmers last Monday. You know, dairy farmers, no matter who they are, I find them to be pleasant people, but the fact is that due to unfair tactics by the Canadian farmers, all the dairy producers in this room were adversely affected when the milk MPCs came back into New York. We would like to urge the committee to recommend fair trade practices with the Canadians. Also, one other brief comment I would like to make is about immigration and how important it is to the dairy producers in New York and throughout the United States. We pay money in annually, monthly, Social Security, and so on. I would like to see a provision that maybe would make our people that we have employed legal for a while until we can find better ways of treating them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Before Mr. Rooms goes, I'd like to ask Lori Griffin from Saratoga Sod Farm to be on deck. Mr. Rooms.
Thank you. My name is Eric Ohms. My family and I have a dairy farm in Kinderhook, New York, where I partner with my father and 2 brothers. We're also farm credit customers, which is a very important part of your bill, and they're our lender. I would just speak to MPP. I'm also the Vice President of New York Farm Bureau as well, so I'll hit a couple of areas real quickly. As far as MPP is concerned, I hope that we can reform that because I think the concepts are good. However, I'm afraid that farmers won't buy into it. Those farmers that I know that purchase into LGM have all had relatively positive experiences. So if there's a way to steer in that direction, that would be fine. Either way, we need an answer on the dairy question. From my neighbors that have fruit and vegetables, we have a specialty crop block grant in the Farm Bill. That is all the support that specialty crops get. And that is so crucial to fund research projects. And as Dean Bohr mentioned before, we need all the research money we can get for that. As far as the conservation title, there are many, many good programs in the conservation title, but I think as a dairy farmer, but it's not just dairy, EQIP is probably the most subscribed program, and I know on my farm, EQIP has been critically important. Lastly, I can't be up here and not talk about immigration reform. We need to find a solution on that, even though I know that's hard. Congratulations, you're in Congress, you can fix it. You didn't start the problem, but we've got to fix it. And then lastly, I am going to say thank you for your trip to Ottawa because it just speaks to the importance that representatives in our government are placing on the practices that Canada is. And it's not just what it's doing to my farm and my neighbors' farms, but some of the things they're doing are setting horrible precedents for the world over. And if we're going to live in a worldwide market, which is where we are, we can't have that happening. So I appreciate your attention to that, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rooms. Before Ms. Griffin speaks, I'd like to ask Leanna Hoods from NOFA, New York, to be on deck. Ms. Griffin.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Lori Griffin. My husband and I own and operate Saratoga Sod Farm, which is just north of here in Saratoga County, where we grow about 600 acres of turf grass sod and another 500 acres of corn and soybeans. I am also director of Farm Credit East, and as part of the Farm Credit System, it's a cooperative providing credit and financial services to more than 14,000 members here in the Northeast, and is the largest provider of credit to farmers and ranchers here in the Northeast in New York. We appreciate the support of the House Ag Committee for the Farm Credit System, and I have 3 issues I'd like to ask for your consideration today. First being crop insurance. Crop insurance is a critical risk management tool for our Northeast producers. We use it ourselves on our farm for our cash crops that we raise, and so we do encourage Congress to maintain a robust program for crop insurance in the Farm Bill. In the Northeast, there's a wide range of livestock products and crops, so we do encourage Congress to provide USDA the flexibility to make crop insurance available and workable for more producers in our region. Secondly, the USDA loan guarantees. As Farm Credit East Director, I know our association works very closely with the USDA in a number of areas. Loan guarantees from the Farm Service Agency are an important tool for our lenders to work with our customers. Customers who may be having financial stress, but are making changes needed to be viable for the long term. I asked the committee to raise the limit for loan guarantees from its current level. With high land values in many parts of the Northeast, lenders sometimes run up against the current cap when working with producers. And lastly, while not part of the immediate Farm Bill discussions, I do want to mention one other thing, which is the ag labor we've heard previously. Our farm currently is able to use the H-2A program. While it's not perfect, we do make it work. However, many farms, such as dairy farmers that you've already heard from, are not able to do that. We appreciate the current efforts in Congress to address this issue, but the bottom line is that agriculture needs to have an effective guest worker program to make illegal adjustments for our current workforce. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. I'd like to ask Tracy Martin from the Regional Food Bank of NENY to be on deck, and this is Leanna Hoods from NOFA, New York. Ms. Hoods.
Good morning, I'm Leanna Hoods from the Northeast Organic Farming Association of New York. Composed of farmers, gardeners, consumers, and businesses, NOFA New York has been serving the organic and sustainable food and farming community since 1983. Through education, outreach, and advocacy, we promote land stewardship, organic food production, and local distribution and marketing. And we are New York's largest USDA-accredited organic certifier of over 1,000 operations. Organic sales and demand have been growing at an annual nearly double-digit rate for over a decade, and New York has consistently ranked in the top 3 to 4 in the nation in organic. Yet U.S. farmers are not able to meet this demand and are losing ground to offshore supply. Our federal policies need to support U.S. organic farmers supplying the U.S. organic demand. A few of our Farm Bill priorities. Organic certification cost share assistance is crucial to increase the number of U.S. organic farmers to meet this demand. The Farms Act, H.R. 3941, which was just introduced, includes certification cost share. The Organic Agriculture Research Act, H.R. 2436, provides research support of $50 million to ORAI to address production constraints faced by organic farmers. Organic research at USDA is under 4% and has been stagnant for years. On average, for instance, only about 0.2% of AFRI funding goes towards organic research. The Organic Farmer and Consumer Protection Act, H.R. 3871. Thank you, Representative Basso, for this bill. This bill will help to prevent the importation of fraudulent organic products from overseas through stricter enforcement of organic entering the U.S. and much more. Seeds and breeds. Farmers need seeds and animal breeds that are ideally suited to their local growing conditions, changing climates, and farming systems. USDA should prioritize this work by using existing research programs to dedicate funds to public plant and animal breeding efforts with a focus on regionally adapted cultivars. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Hoods. I'd like to ask Chris Tosel from New York State Agricultural Mediation Program to be on deck. This is Tracy Martin from the Regional Food Bank of NENY.
So as you just said, my name is Tracy Martin, and I'm from the Regional Food Bank of Northeastern New York. We serve 23 counties in upstate New York. We're a member of Feeding America, the National Food Bank Network, and a member of the Food Bank Association of New York State with 9 other food banks in the state. We provide food and other basic need items to a network of 1,000 food pantries, soup kitchens, and other charitable feeding programs. And last year we distributed more than 36 million pounds of donated items to this network and helped feed 300,000 different people. We believe that food is medicine and it's a cornerstone of good health. That's why we work hard to provide people with nutritious food and help them make healthy food choices at grocery stores. We operate a farm ourselves, growing fresh produce, and operate free food bank farm stands in areas without grocery stores, known as food deserts, so that people in mostly urban areas can have access to healthy food, even when grocery stores are far away and transportation is limited. We also provide nutrition education classes to people who visit food pantries to help them make the most of their resources. We cover topics like menu planning, shopping on a budget, reading food labels, avoiding sugar-sweetened drinks, because we know that there's a lot of thought about people when they use their food stamps, using them to make healthy food choices, and that's what we try to encourage them to do on their own. And some of the people that we serve, just to give a face to the face of hunger, are working parents and children, senior citizens, veterans, and people with medical issues and disabilities. We asked our food pantries to contact the people that they serve and those who are willing to share some stories. So I just wanted to read a few of those to you here. My husband and I both work full-time and make too much to qualify for public assistance. But after monthly rent, gas, and utilities, we wind up at the end of each month with not enough food to feed our 3 kids. We are so appreciative of the food we receive from the pantry. It's such a load off my mind to know we will have enough to not have to skimp on meals at the end of the month. Another pantry person had this to say: I am a single mother with 3 children, and although I have a regular job, all my expenses leave little money for enough food to last the month after my food stamps are gone. Before I started going to the pantry, I often didn't eat much the last 4 or 5 days of the month so that I'd have food for my kids. I don't know what we would do without the food we get from the pantry. Shirley is a senior citizen who lives in senior housing. The food pantry helps to supplement her SNAP benefits and ensure she has resources for medication and other important needs. Food banks, food pantries, and soup kitchens provide critical food assistance to people like Shirley, but we cannot do it alone. So I encourage you to support SNAP and TFAP in the Farm Bill. They are just so important to the local economy. TFAP supports farmers, SNAP supports retail grocers, and altogether we can help hungry people have better futures. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. I'd like to ask Sherry Tomaski to be on deck, and this is Chris Tozel of New York State Agricultural Mediation Program. Chris.
Good morning. I'm speaking with you today as the Program Director of the New York State Agricultural Mediation Program. And part of my participation and my belief in the agricultural mediation comes from growing up on farms in New York and currently being an active part of our family farm. I appreciate the opportunity to highlight and share with you in broad terms the work and needs of 40 state certified agricultural mediation programs. Briefly, through the Agricultural Credit Act of 1987, Congress created and funded a program for the USDA to certify agricultural mediation programs. These programs provide critical mediation services that enable producers, lenders, creditors, USDA agencies, and other members of the agricultural community to resolve problems before they become more complicated and costly. Today, 30 years later, farmers and ranchers continue to face enormous challenges. Mediation continues to increase in value as an effective means to address these challenges. From our experience, producers, landowners, and homeowners value the voluntary, confidential, and problem-solving framework of mediation. It is very important to them to discuss their concerns in person and create the solutions that meet their needs. Originally, mediation was limited to USDA Farm Service Agency and Farm Credit System loans. When there was success in resolving issues between FSA and producers, that led to congressional action expanding the scope of the program in 1994 and 2000. During the deliberation and design of the next Farm Bill, you have the opportunity to secure and position agricultural mediation programs of the future as robust, productive, cost-effective channels for resolving issues faced by the agricultural community. The Coalition of Agricultural Mediation Programs offers the following suggestions for your consideration in modernizing the agricultural mediation program in the new Farm Bill. We suggest reauthorizing timely and adequate funding and designating the USDA Agricultural Mediation Program for mandatory funding. We offer suggestions for expanding the scope of the program to allow funds to be used for issues such as lease disputes, family farm transitions, and farmer-neighbor disputes. And one suggestion in addition is designating the Secretary of Agriculture in each state with authority to add case types appropriate to that state. Part of the work that my colleague Claudia Kenny and I do, in addition to our work coordinating the agricultural mediations, is often to present workshops or suggestions on ways to improve communication for more effective family and business relationships. We always include the importance of active listening. So thank you for your presence, your mindfulness, and your skilled listening.
Thank you, Ms. Tozel. On deck, we'll have Stephen Wilson, and this is Sherry Tomaski, Hunger Solutions of New York.
Thank you. I'm here today representing Hunger Solutions New York. We're a statewide nonprofit organization focused on maximizing participation in federal nutrition programs for all who are eligible. We are glad to be here today to share our perspective on the value of the SNAP program in New York State. More than 2.8 million New Yorkers rely on SNAP to feed themselves and their families. When we look a little deeper at that population, you'll see that about 1.1 million SNAP recipients are children under the age of 18. Over 600,000 are seniors, and according to the most recent research, about 71,000 are veterans.
We also know that 465,000 families use SNAP, and in those families, 74% had at least one member working over the past 12 months. We also know that SNAP helps those in rural communities just as much as it does in those in urban and suburban communities. About 15% of those living in rural communities across New York State rely on SNAP, which is the equivalent of the percentage that is utilizing SNAP in large cities and urban areas. So we know that this is an important and necessary program for people that live right here in the Schoharie Valley and all across upstate New York. And we know that you're aware of many of these facts, but we also want to use this opportunity to point out that there's still an unmet need in New York. The USDA just recently released its food insecurity data, and New York showed that 12.5% of the population is still struggling with food insecurity. There are 1.6 million public school students who qualify for free and reduced price meals in this state, demonstrating that a majority of our children are still living in households below 200% of the poverty level. And New York State is also in the top 4 states in the country with a senior SNAP gap, meaning that about 500,000 seniors who may be eligible for SNAP are not participating. So we definitely have a ways to go to meet the nutritional needs of those in our state. So with that, we would like to urge you to protect the SNAP program, to keep it intact, to reject any efforts to turn it into anything other than the entitlement program that it is. We'd like to see benefits and eligibility levels protected for all New Yorkers. And we'd like SNAP to maintain its flexibility to be responsive in times of disaster or unexpected financial need for individuals and families. And we'd also like to share with you that while we agree that a declining SNAP role is something that we all aspire to, we want it to happen for all of the right reasons and not for people to be artificially pushed deeper into poverty. Thank you for this chance to share our thoughts about the SNAP program in New York.
Thank you, Ms. Tomasky. On deck, we're going to have Kim Doyle, and this is Stephen Wilson, Empire State Honey Producers Association. Stephen?
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm going to address 6 of the major issues which we face as beekeepers. I'm speaking for the beekeepers of the state of New York and as the chairman of the policy committee of the Empire State Honey Producers Association. First on our list is continued and enhanced support for the ARS Beltsville, Maryland honeybee testing and research labs, and very much needed, very strong support for research and application of Varroa destructor mite control eradication. The mite is the major threat which we face today in order to sustain our industry and our hives. Second, federal support for the means of controlling applications of glyphosate and certain neonicotinoids, a great variety of pesticides, which I'm sure you are aware have been fingered by researchers both in this country, in the province of Ontario, and throughout Europe as a threat to bees. Third, continuation of the NASS honeybee health surveys, USDA APHIS APHIS program, support for the development in order to understand the potential impacts of launching ubiquitous biological controls of spotted knapweed, Japanese knotweed, purple loosestrife, among the invasives which bees find to be tremendously important as critical late season honeybee forage plants. The continued close monitoring and enforcement for foreign importation of contaminated honeys. And lastly, continued funding for the Emergency Livestock Assistance Program, ELAP insurance program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. On deck, we're going to have Brian Shapiro, and speaking now is Kim Doyle, New York State FFA.
Hello, and thank you all for being here. Chairman Conway, earlier this month at a breakfast with several FFA members, you had mentioned that you would like to deputize FFA members so that they can share the agriculture story. Well, here I am. My name is Kim Doyle, and I come from Neversink, New York. I'm currently attending SUNY Sullivan and am representing New York this year as the New York State FFA reporter. I serve over 4,500 FFA members. The New York FFA Association is a part of the National FFA organization, which boasts over 649,355 FFA members from all 50 states, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. I've been a part of this organization since as young as I can remember, and it is what has pushed me towards pursuing a career as an agricultural educator. But according to the National Institute of Food and Agriculture at the United States Department of Agriculture, an estimated 57,900 high-skilled jobs will open annually over the next 5 years. But an annual shortfall of 22,500 agricultural professionals would be available to take those positions. Now more than ever, we need sound legislation that is concerned about the future of agriculture as much as it's concerned about the need for safety nets and nutrition programs. We need policy that pushes students to return to the farm and take advantage of those opportunities to pursue careers in agriculture while also supporting them in doing so. The next version of the Farm Bill can do so by heightening the youth profile in food and agriculture and establishing an agricultural youth coordinator in the Secretary of Agriculture's office who can communicate the area of match between the delivery needs of the USDA and youth organizations like the National FFA. A person who can connect the dots for students like myself who wish to pursue a career in agriculture. As the 115th Congress works to advance agricultural priorities and your bodies work to reauthorize the Farm Bill, we hope that you continue to consider us the future of agriculture. Thank you.
Go Tri-Valley.
Thank you, Ms. Doyle. On deck, we're going to ask Arden Tewksbury to come forward, and this is Brian Shapiro, New York State Director of the Humane Society.
Hi, good morning. My name is Brian Shapiro, New York State Director for the Humane Society of the United States. It's an honor to speak before the committee and also before my own representative, Congressman Faso. Thank you. The Humane Society of the United States opposes inclusion of Representative King's H.R. 3599 and Representative Steinbrenner's H.R. 2887 in the Farm Bill. Their continuation of Representative King's highly controversial amendment that almost sank the Farm Bill 4 years ago before it was wisely omitted from the final package. These bills would undercut voters and harm agricultural and economic interests. They take a lowest common denominator approach. If any one state in the nation permits the production or sale of a particular agricultural product, no matter how hazardous the product may be or unacceptable a production process, every other state could have to sell it as well. This runs contrary, of course, to the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution protecting the sovereignty of state rights. These bills could also nullify hundreds of state laws designed to protect public health and welfare across a wide range of concerns, from labeling of seeds and promotion of local sustainable agriculture to child labor and puppy mills. Virtually any state or local law regarding agriculture as it's broadly defined could be wiped out by H.R. 3599. And any state or local law that is even remotely related to interstate commerce could be wiped out by H.R. 2887. No one even knows the full extent of state laws that could be undermined, and it may very well create a constitutional crisis that could trigger extreme uncertainty in agriculture and investment markets. We urge you to reject these bills with all due respect, and any similar drastic federal overreach that would undermine states' abilities to protect their citizens and local businesses and reflect the public will. With that said, I just also want to add, for many years, I was a county legislator and also vice chair of our Soil and Water Conservation District, so I truly appreciate the work that you do every day for this opportunity to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shapiro. On deck, we're going to ask Jim Davenport to come forward, and this is Arden Tewksbury, Progressive Ag.
Gosh, G.G. Thompson, if I knew you were going to be here, I'd have rode up with you. Sure, from the same state, okay? Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you for a few minutes. Chairman Conaway, I was one of the people that was in the audience of the big hearing you had in Washington about 3 or 4 months ago, where Dr. Dykes talked and Jim Mulhern from National Milk. And with all due respect to the two gentlemen, I don't think they really related to you how bad it is out on our dairy farms. And something must be done, but the fact that they didn't do a good job, I will say, your members of your committee, I thought, did a real good job in recognizing something has to be done with our school lunch program, and especially getting whole milk back in our schools, both whole chocolate milk, flavored milk, and white milk. And you guys can do it, and we're depending on you to do it. And GT, we've talked about this many times, and I know you're involved in it. This year, let's get it done. Anybody can walk into any store and get any milk they want to, but we're depriving our kids in school from having the best milk that is out there. I've been on the school board for 57 years in Pennsylvania. I know what's going on in our schools, so we're depending on you guys to do something about it, okay? And I also want to say that we take a different position on margin insurance. I wrote several editorials when it came out. I said it would not do the job for dairy farmers. I called it a ill-conceived fiasco. And when it first came out, you only got about 13,000 members, farmers that signed up. The secretary had to open up the enrollment 2 or 3 times to get it up a little bit higher. Then scare tactics went out to say about the prices going down. You finally got up to 24,000 dairy farmers into it. Now it's way down below those figures now. We need something different for dairy farmers. We don't need margin insurance. We need a new pricing formula for dairy farmers that's going to allow our dairy farmers to cover their cost of production. Right now, the dairy farmers' cost on a national average is running about $4 or $5 a hundredweight more than what they are receiving for their milk. There's no reason for that to have to happen. I would urge all you gentlemen and ladies to look up the Federal Milk Market Improvement Act. I know GT knows what I'm talking about. And look at that bill and see if we can't pull some things out of that bill to get a better price for our dairy farmers and get the real milk back out to our consumers and get the whole milk back in the schools for our kids. And if we get these things done, we can help this girl over here with a nutrition program. We should not be dumping milk in lagoons. We should not be throwing milk away. We should be manufacturing that milk into products and getting whole milk into these nutrition programs instead of dumping it away and spoiling it. So I hope you fellows and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, will get our message. Something's got to be done out on our farms. I testified recently in front of the Pennsylvania Milk Marketing Board, and they now have continued their $1.60 per hundredweight premium on fluid milk in Pennsylvania. And it's going to continue that way. That is not the answer, but it helps a little bit. What we need is a new pricing formula for these dairy farmers all across the United States. It's possible. We know what the cost of production is, and it can be done. We're going to depend on you gentlemen to get it done. Get the right pricing formula for dairy farmers and get whole milk back in the school. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tewksbury.
Go
Yes.
ahead, Tim. Then I want to just give an update on the milk, school milk. Go ahead and call down the next.
Okay, our next person on deck will be Joel Berg, and then this is Jim Davenport, a dairy farmer from the Hudson Valley.
I just want to give a real quick update. Arden, as always, you've unpacked a lot. And one thing I wanted to talk about, just briefly update, and I think it is one of the most important things we can do in terms of increasing the market with the school lunch program. It's not just lunch, it's breakfast, lunch. I have one, I personally have a congressional district so rural and poverty so high they feed them dinner before they send them home. The fact is that back in March we did include in legislation, and then Secretary Perdue did administratively, allowing our schools to seek a waiver to be able to serve and sell milk with fat in it. Now it's 1% to start with. Because everyone, dairy farmers, everyone knows that fat is where the nutrition is and fat is where the flavor is. We're dropping a bill this coming week that takes it from a waiver process, which right now, I don't know the statistics in New York, I apologize, but in Pennsylvania and only about a third of our school districts have pursued that waiver to do that. So the new legislation will take it from a waiver program to make it permanent, which means we take all the paperwork and the bureaucracy out of it. And so just wanted to give an update where we're at. That schools can now petition to do that, and we're hoping to make that process even simpler in the future. And you're absolutely right. There's not a reason in the world we shouldn't work that. You know, first school is 1%, next school is 2%. What's that? Right. Yeah, the jurisdiction on that is education workforce. That's correct. I'm on both, so sometimes I get my jurisdiction confused. But it is. You can seek that waiver as a school board.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Davenport.
Hi, I'm Jim Davenport, dairy farmer and representative Fasso's district right by Connecticut, Massachusetts. I brought some milk here. I hope Chairman and your folks get some of that milk before it all goes. But anyway, what I'd really like to talk about, I'm a product of the land-grant universities. I will say my CUM was pretty pathetic, but I did get a degree. I firmly believe that America is the greatest country in the world. There's room to increase our greatness, but we are the greatest. And part of the reason is because the business I'm in is agriculture. And because of the land-grant university, applied science, science in general, we've been able to produce way more food that we can possibly use and do it in a safe fashion. Our food is the best and most nutritious in the world as far as I'm concerned. And what I want to make sure is that we are able to not hinder trade. Trade is critical. If we didn't have foreign trade with dairy, we would be absolutely dead right now with the amount of milk we're able to make in a high-cost environment. And hopefully we can make sure that we don't ruin trade. The other thing I'd just like to touch on, and it was just brought up, all milk tastes better with fat in it. That's the bottom line. You know, some people, processors may not do as good a job as they should when they're doing bulk milk to schools, but their high-fat milk always tastes better than low-fat. And the nutritional package in milk, I think, is critical to make sure that the kids drink something that's good for them, that's going to help them develop into thinking and people who contribute to society, you know, thinking members of the public. And then the last thing I just had to touch on, I'm still using a lot of money to farm, and it's all farm credit money. And one thing that I just like to remind people with farm credit, they will not give you a 30-year mortgage to pay off the credit card bill of the groceries you ate last month. Farm credit, basically their funding comes through a bond system, and we're always very close. T-bills is the best, we're always second. There's a reason for that, because we manage our money properly, and we loan money to people who have good ideas that can make money with it. So any time that the farm credit system is under attack, I'm one small borrower that's a firm believer in it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davenport. On deck, we'll have Brian Grubb, and this is Joel Berg, CEO of Hunger Free America.
Hello, I'm Joel Berg, CEO of Hunger Free America. We're a nationwide direct service and advocacy group. I am going to thank the committee for your public service meeting on a holiday, but I'm going to thank you even more after you take the lead in ending hunger in America, building on the long bipartisan tradition in Congress, including key Republicans like the late Bill Emerson, Robert Dole, Richard Lugar, and even Richard Nixon. Here in bucolic, mostly rural Schoharie County, 1 in 10 people in this very county rely on the SNAP program to feed their families. That's 5 times as many people rely on the farm programs. And my message to everyone today is farmers cannot succeed as long as 41 million Americans, including 13 million American children, live in homes that can't afford enough food. That costs our society $167 billion a year because hungry children can't learn, hungry workers can't work, and hungry seniors can't stay independent. Now I've calculated we could end hunger in America with $20 billion more in federal spending, not just on SNAP, but to increase jobs, raise wages through jobs programs, including a food jobs program I outlined in the written testimony I've provided to the committee staff, and increase SNAP funding. Now, if you're going to say we can't afford it, I would respectfully suggest if you just authorized $1 trillion in tax cuts for the very rich, you can afford to spend $20 billion to solve a $167 billion program. We can't afford it. We must do it. It's in our self-interest. I note that this committee hearing or listening session opened with a prayer. As you know, Matthew 25, Christ instructs that we must end hunger. It's in the Old Testament. It's in every other religious and ethical tradition on the planet. And I close with this. If there are going to be reforms in SNAP, and I've also proposed to the committee in my testimony ways to modify and modernize the program to put more money in people's pockets while saving money by stripping away tens of thousands of workers around the country who are filling out paperwork and allowing low-income people to apply for these benefits with a smartphone. But if you're going to cut benefits, which are $1.40 per meal now, and use it as an excuse, as a fig leaf, that you're cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. Please don't. Let's just have an honest conversation with the American people. If you cut another penny from this program, over $10 billion already cut in the previous Farm Bill and the previous Child Nutrition Bill, please understand you will be increasing hunger in America, and the vast majority of people who rely on the SNAP program, as you know, are children, senior citizens, people with disabilities, and veterans. The easy stuff, they're taking lottery winners out of the program, that's been done. Another penny out of this program will increase hunger in America. That's why I urge you to do what makes sense. In the Republican tradition of enforcing a society where everyone can succeed based on their abilities, we need people to have the nutrition to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berg. On deck, we're going to have Dave Hardy, and this is Brian Grubb, National Bison Association.
That's a tough act to follow there. Yeah, I'm Brian Grubb. I am a bison producer about 10 miles north of here. We run a herd of 125 cow-calf pairs, so we're kind of a small to medium-sized operation. Last year, I want to thank, if any of you voted for the bill last year that designated bison as our national mammal, I want to thank you for that. After that happened, the National Bison Association got together and said, well, you know, what's the next step? We were able, along with the Intertribal Buffalo Council, we were able to get them designated, get bison designated as the national mammal. We thought maybe the next step is to try to get 1 million bison in North America. Right now there's about 450,000. And so we put our heads together to think about what it would take to get 1 million bison in North America. I have some buffer stickers for you. The bison industry is probably one of the few bright spots in agriculture these days. I talked with a friend of mine down in Pennsylvania the other day, and he took a load of fats to beef cows to market and got $1.25 a pound hot hanging rate. Currently, bison are trading at $4.85 a pound, and we've seen 15 straight years of increased prices. But there are some things that will help our industry and help us get to 1 million, and that is to continue with the ELAB programs, the livestock indemnity program. The EQIP program is good for our producers because fencing is our biggest cost. And then continue to include bison as eligible livestock for all conservation programs. Continue the Consolidated Farm and Rural Development Act, farm ownership and operating loans at current levels, and direct offices to consider alternative livestock enterprises as eligible applicants for those loans. Assure that bison producers are eligible for all livestock programs. Provide $25 million annually for the Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program that will enhance the sustainability of the next generation of farmers, because most people that go into the bison production business are not existing farmers and ranchers. They're usually new producers. And then continue to support the $30 million a year for a farmers market promotion program, because the health of our industry is based upon the last 15 years of the producers going to farmers markets every Saturday and selling the product direct to the customer. And that's, we built our success on the backs of those local farmers. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grubb. On deck, we're going to ask Ruth Moore to come forward. This is Dave Hardy from Organic Valley.
I'm Dave Hardy from Mohawk, New York. I'm a first-generation organic dairy farmer. My wife and I started shipping organic milk 18 years ago when our children were very young. Organic farming has given our oldest son an opportunity to join the business, and he sees a positive future for organic dairy farming here in New York State. I also sit on the board of directors for Cooperative, better known as Organic Valley. As you know, organic continues to grow, $50 billion in sales in 2016 and $7.6 billion at the farm gate. It's a choice for farmers, businesses, and consumers, an integral part of the organic landscape. And Organic Valley Co-op works with over 160 farmers here in New York State and over 2,000 nationwide. We have two priorities for you to consider in the Farm Bill. As a farmer and a co-op board member, we strongly support the Organic Farmer and Consumer Protection Act introduced by Representative Faso, and we hope that we can make it into the Farm Bill to ensure the agency, NOP, has greater resources and latitude to crack down on organic fraud, especially in an international space. I work hard to follow the organic standards, and so should everyone else selling organic products. We also support the Organic Agriculture Research Act, introduced by Representative Pingree and Newhouse, and this initiative helps fund agronomic organic research, which can help farmers address production challenges with increased knowledge from research, and can help farmers become more efficient and profitable. Organics has made a big difference for myself and my family, and I know it's made a difference for thousands of other organic farm families across this country. We hope you can continue to support this voluntary, market-driven sector in the next Farm Bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. On deck, we'll have Suzanne Gralick come forward, and this is Ruth Moore, Executive Director, Cornell Cooperative Extension of Dutchess County.
Good morning. I'm going to be speaking this morning about Farm Bill capacity funding for cooperative extension activities in our communities. Smith, Lever, and Hatch Act funds provide critical support for the work that our extension associations do in every county in New York State. Importantly, these funds position us to leverage state, county, and other funds to address local agricultural needs. For example, here in the Hudson Valley, Cornell's Eastern New York Commercial Horticulture Program delivers the latest research, technology, and practical agricultural education to our fruit and vegetable growers. 17 extension associations up and down the valley partner with the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences on campus to fund the team, which offers specialized expertise to our growers that individual associations just can't provide on their own. Federal capacity funds have been a critical piece of the puzzle in leveraging millions of state, county, and other dollars for these programs. In the last year alone, the Commercial Hort Program received $165,000 in Smith-Lever funding, but it leveraged $914,000 in funds from county-based funding and other sources. I also want to mention briefly the SNAP program because we deliver nutrition education to low-income households through SNAP. Recent research underscores that children who receive SNAP benefits are healthier, do better in school, and are more likely to focus and behave in class, and are 18% more likely to graduate from high school. Another study shows that participation in the SNAP program results in lower health care costs to those SNAP participants. I urge you to consider these positive impacts as you craft the Farm Bill. And finally, the Farm Bill funds create capacity through Cornell's Extension Disaster Extension Network, or EDEN, to reduce impacts from natural disasters in our communities. Recently, EDEN helped to coordinate local extension actions in the Hudson Valley to assist a farmer-led initiative to donate, aggregate, and transport food and supplies to hurricane victims, in particular hay, truckloads of it to Texas to feed livestock. We depend on capacity funding to support these efforts, and we respectfully request your help in continuing this important work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. On deck, we'll have Holly Rippin-Butler come forward, and this is Suzanne Gralick, a dairy producer from Cobleskill.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Gralick, and I am here from Cobleskill to represent a small voice dairy producer here in Schoharie County. My husband is a third-generation dairy farmer. I have a son who is intending to also pursue this field as a fourth-generation dairy farmer and is applying right now to dairy science programs across the nation. My concern that I want to bring to you is a perspective, and specifically I want you to understand what the impact is when you have to have the way you are paid be governed by a milk price. In January, the minimum wage for agricultural workers in our area increased to $9.70, and this is on an increasing scale. It'll increase by 70 cents per year until the wage meets $15 per hour. It is, you may or may not be aware that in our area in particular, it is difficult to find qualified, good workers, and so we have to compete for them. So what this means is we have to pay well above the minimum wage. And as there is an increase, we also increase. In the past year, we've increased approximately $2 per hour. In the past month, it's been $1.40, just to make sure that we have good labor working with us. And I will tell you that the dairy industry has a very good relationship with their employees, and we want to be able to do that. But these type of increases, these type of increases cannot be passed on to the consumer because of the way that we're paid. And so any kind of increase, minimum wage, it could be any type of mandated change in the way we do business, such as building structures for environmental protection, anything that we do cannot be passed on. So it becomes a penalty to the farmer. I don't know your bill, and I don't know where you can help, but I'm hoping that this perspective will give you an opportunity as you go through the bill to look for opportunities to make sure that we're compensated in a manner that we can continue to do business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Graulich. On deck, we'll ask Trevor Bentley to come forward. And this is Holly Rippon-Butler, National Young Farmers Coalition.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I am Holly Rippon-Butler. I am the Land Access Program Director with the National Young Farmers Coalition. We're a grassroots network of young farmers and ranchers around the country with 37 chapters in 26 states. So I'm here to talk to you about land access today. I grew up on a dairy farm, third generation dairy outside of Saratoga in upstate New York. And I would like to return to that farm one day. My dad is home milking cows right now. But I'm here talking about land access because I don't want to return to that farm as the only young farmer in my area. There are so many young farmers in around the country who need help, who want to get started, but land access is the biggest barrier that they face. When my grandparents bought this farm, they had come from generations of dairy farmers before them, but wanted to buy this farm to start their own business. They were able to do that. They had second jobs. My grandmother worked nights in a hospital, cleaning toilets, those kind of things, but they were able to save the money to access credit, to buy the farm, build infrastructure, and pass it on to my dad. I don't see that being possible for many young farmers today because the context has changed. Land prices have doubled in the last decade. We are seeing competition from second home buyers, from developers, that's making farmland unaffordable on a farming income to a degree that has never been in history. Currently, a dollar in value of farm real estate is worth the least that it has ever been in farm production. So we're seeing increasing divide between what farm prices cost and what you can actually produce on that land. In addition, we're at a kind of a critical moment in our country with our natural resources. Land is an incredibly important and, as they say, they're not making more of it, resource. So we need to do something now to address the amount of land that is transitioning. About 2/3 of our ag land in this country is set to need a new farmer in the next couple decades. And in the next 5 years alone, about 10% or nearly 100 million acres of our land will change hands. So this is a critical moment to act to address the challenges that young farmers are facing of affordability on a farming income and of being able to outcompete in the marketplace. We're seeing 25 million acres of our land is in foreign hands, so it's not just from local second homeowners and real estate developers, it's also foreign ownership that we need to pay attention to. Farmers, young farmers need your help. They need the help of this farm bill to address this critical challenge. In particular, some areas where you have the power to help them are through the USDA Direct Farm Ownership Loan. We need to increase the loan cap on that to take advantage or to recognize the actual prices of land and peg that to regional inflation values. We need to increase funding and priority for conservation easements. This is a tool that is working in communities to help bring farm values back to what farmers can afford. We need to make sure we prioritize easements within that program that actually protect land for working farmers. And we need to increase availability of appropriate capital. We need to streamline the process for accessing capital through the FSA and get those loan applications online to make it easier for farmers to access it. There are many more things that I'm sure some other young farmers in the audience will talk to you about, but land is the basis of this conversation that we're having today, and I urge you to take action to address this at the critical moment that we're at.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Butler. On deck, we'll ask Mark Schneider to come forward, and this is Trevor Bentley from Ducks Unlimited. Trevor?
Mr. Chairman, Congressman Peterson, and Congressman Faso, thank you for coming to SUNY Cobleskill. I'm the 6th generation from my family farm, and I'm also an active member of Ducks Unlimited, the SUNY Cobleskill chapter. Nationwide, we have 1 million members, and in the great state of New York, we have over 16,000. So we have a pretty strong voice. DU is proud to partner with the USDA in delivering different conservation programs to farmers, ranchers, and landowners. We understand that passage of farm bills requires trust, compromises, and consensus among a broad diversity of groups and regions. The Farm Bill represents the largest investment in private land conservation we make as a country, and is therefore critically important to sportsmen and women who depend on healthy wildlife populations to pursue and harvest. Each year, hunters and anglers spend nearly $5 billion in New York and support 56,000 jobs statewide. Conservation is in high demand across the country, especially here in New York. Ducks Unlimited supports strong wetland and grassland conservation for the benefit of soil and water quality, as well as fish and wildlife habitat. We support strong funding for important land programs such as the Environmental Quality Incentive Program, Conservation Stewardship Program, and the Conservation Reserve Program. We also support a robust agriculture conservation easement program, including wetland easements. As a future farmer and conservationist, I hope that Congress will work hard to keep conservation programs strong in the 2008 Farm Bill so that landowners can continue their conservation legacy, whether that's creating wildlife habitat, protecting clean water sources, or protecting soil quality across America to allow the next generation an opportunity to enjoy profitable and healthy agricultural landscape. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bentley. On deck, we're going to ask Christopher Novak to come forward. This is Mark Schneider, Delaware County Electric Cooperative.
Good morning. My name is Mark Schneider, and I work for the Delaware County Electric Co-op. Rural electric cooperatives are not-for-profit electric providers owned by our customers, our members, and they're governed by member-elected boards of directors. The Delaware County Electric Cooperative serves 5,300 member locations in Delaware, Otsego, Shenango, and Schoharie counties. In addition to providing electricity and other products and services to our member consumers, electric co-ops have a proud tradition of community service. Co-op members and employees participate in economic development efforts that contribute to a good quality of life in the communities that we serve. That's why the Farm Bill is so important to us. It contains many of the tools electric cooperatives use, not just to maintain the grid, but to invest in the communities we serve. As an example, RUS, the Rural Utilities Service, has been a very successful public-private partnership that helps us build, maintain, and modernize infrastructure in rural America. The Red Leg Rural Economic Development and Loan and Grant Program is another tool that aids rural economic and community development activities. Red Leg is a USDA program funded by the fees and interest paid by co-ops. We relend that money for projects in our communities that support the local economy, like expanding a hospital or building essential infrastructure to attract a business. That money can often leverage other forms of financing, and it is reliably repaid. It's an all-around win for the community and the taxpayer. We need to support rural America because we still grow most of the food and make most of the goods our country consumes. The Ag Committee is a great defender of rural America. We ask you to continue supporting these and other important programs that support electric cooperatives and the members we serve. Thank you for listening, and good luck with your discernment.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. On deck, we'll ask James Fitzpatrick to come forward. This is Christopher Novak, the Town of Palatine Councilman.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for stopping by, everybody. We really appreciate it. I once heard President Reagan said, be leery of anyone who says that I'm here from the government and I'm here to help. So I hope you guys can help us. I'm a town councilman in the town of Palatine, which is in Montgomery County, about 10, 15 miles north of here. Besides a few retail businesses, the #1 industry in our town is agriculture. We have over 50 Amish and English farms in our community. Only 2 of them are over 500 acres. Including myself, I run an organic diversified farm in the town. Most of my farmers really don't benefit from the Farm Bill because they don't understand the details that they can benefit from the bill. We had a meeting recently on the agricultural protection plan for our state. I got 40 farmers in a room. Not one bad word broke out, which I was very surprised. But in addition, what they said is the 3 overwhelming factors that hurt them are government regulation and overreach, high and oppressive taxes for their farmlands that they pay, and all the other taxes that they pay on top of it. In most of their cases, they will pay their entire farm's worth off in less time than they'll pay their mortgage off. The third one was access to markets, and the last one was traffic. I can only help with traffic. We put up a couple of speed signs. So the rest of it is up to you. But the government regulations and overreach, the bloated bureaucracy that someone tries to go through when they want to access some programs is just horrible. I'll give you a prime example very quickly. I myself wanted to get a hoop house grant that the NRCS has, one of the agencies we have. I waited like 13 months for this grant. We had to fill out paperwork, we had to show what we wanted to buy. In the meantime, we went to Kiva Zip, we funded a crowdsourced loan, got the money in 48 hours at 0% interest, and paid back our friends, neighbors, and customers the exact money. If you want to do something, get somebody on the ground that can help us small farmers wade through all the stuff that we need to access some of these funds so we can be better farmers and get some money going. I mean, it's great to be big or go home, but in our case, we're a little tiny and we want to stay here. And we're the people that are going to stay here when everybody else is done. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Novak. On deck, we'll ask Jean Darling to come forward. This is James Fitzpatrick from Arthur Carroll Insurance Agency. Jim.
Hello, my name is James Fitzpatrick. I'm a crop insurance agent with Arthur Carroll Insurance Agency. We cover all of New England and New York. I want to just say that the multi-peril crop insurance it's been simple and effective. It's really helped farmers in their time of need with things that they can't control. Adverse weather conditions have been an important role. We like how these policies are based on the producer's production and that they have guarantees. We feel the whole farm policy should stay in the pilot. It still needs some work. It was meant for wholesale growers and the diverse growers in this area that are more direct market. It doesn't work as well for them, and there's some changes that need to be made in order for that to happen. Also, there's been some changes to the apple policy we think are detrimental to some of these farmers, and there's also more talks about changing it. I think you should reconsider and maybe sit down with some more apple growers and get their thoughts. Also, just remember with the cuts that have been talked about to the Farm Bill for crop insurance, that it's these people's livelihoods could hurt. I mean, they have no control over the weather, and they need the safety net. It's not farms, it's families, and we're protecting our country's food supply. So that's all I want to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzpatrick. On deck, we'll ask Erica Tebbins to come forward. This is Jean Darling. She's the Cornell Cooperative Extension Executive Director in Delaware County.
Good morning. As you know, it's funded through Smith-Lever and Hatch funding streams. The federal funds in concert with state and local funding provide an essential foundation that ensures that Cornell Cooperative Extension has the capacity to address critical local community needs and challenges. In Delaware County, Cornell Cooperative Extension has had a strong partnership with Cornell University for the past 20 years in addressing environmental management on farms in the New York City watershed, where we work with farmers and our local partners to ensure clean drinking water every day for the 9 million consumers of water in New York City. This partnership has brought sound research and university expertise to bear on the implementation of agricultural environmental management in the New York City Watershed Agriculture Program, including research on minimizing drinking water pathogens, implementing improved farm manure nutrient management, and developing methods of precision feed management on dairy farms to reduce nutrient accumulations and issues on the farms. These partnerships have benefited the Chesapeake Bay watershed as we work with farms in this watershed as well, and our methods and tools have been adopted statewide. Our extension agricultural field staff are also assisting farms regularly in implementing safe and effective pest management on their farms, and they rely heavily on partnerships with Cornell's pest management researchers and specialists who develop weed, disease, and animal pest management recommendations tailored to our New York conditions and regulations. The fruits of this collaboration are productive, reliable farms and a safe food supply. Cornell Cooperative Extension supports agriculture in Delaware County through 4-H youth development, food safety, nutrition education, sponsoring farmer markets, farm succession and transition planning, farmland protection, and education for profitable and environmental sustainable practice on local farms. In conclusion, on behalf of Cornell Cooperative Extension, our farmers and the consumers of food and water from their farms, I urge USDA to continue to invest strongly through Smith-Lever and Hatch Act funding and the effective federal, state, and local partnerships represented in the Cooperative Extension system. The Cooperative Extension system would not have persisted for over 100 years if it had not been a cost-effective, productive partnership worth maintaining. We urge you to continue supporting this important federal, state, and local partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Darling. On deck, we'll ask Andrew Dugan to come forward. This is Erica Tebbins, a business owner and a veteran spouse from Ballston Spa.
My name is Erica Tebbins, and a year and a half ago, I testified before you, Chairman Conaway, about my time as a military spouse receiving WIC benefits. I also explained how we were shut out of SNAP benefits since that program includes the housing allowances income while the WIC program does not. The IRS specifically excludes the housing allowance as income when determining eligibility for the Earned Income Tax Credit, Child Tax Credit, Head Start, and other federal assistance programs, as you know. Currently, about 22,000 active duty military families receive SNAP benefits. Many more could if the housing allowance was excluded as income. Having lived as a military spouse for 8 years, I'm proud of our family's sacrifice, but feel ashamed that too many American military families face the silent shame of food insecurity. As a military family, it's challenging for spouses to find steady employment while raising kids without family around and having to move every 2 to 3 years. Because of this, many military families' only source of income is their military paycheck. These are people who look to the military for a better life in many cases and suddenly have to deal with deployments and difficult schedules and also putting food on the table. This simply should not be. I thought you had pledged to help us make this right, but I understand you stood in the way of consideration of an amendment on this issue in the most recent NDAA markup, and as a result, nothing was amended. How much longer must struggling military families wait to get the support they need and deserve from SNAP? If this provision is not included in the Farm Bill, or this Farm Bill gets delayed, will you commit to working on this in the next NDAA or through another vehicle to get this resolved as soon as possible? Families who sacrifice so much for their country shouldn't also worry about how to feed themselves and their kids. How can we be expected to have the greatest military when so many of its own are struggling with the basics? This is a nonpartisan issue, and I implore you to amend SNAP to omit the housing allowances income. And since you didn't want us to thank you, I'll thank the veterans and the spouses in this room who continue to serve through agriculture and advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tebbins. On deck, we'll ask Denise Lloyd to come forward. Speaking now is Andrew Dugan, Northeast Agribusiness and Feed Alliance.
Good morning, Chairman Conway. I enjoyed your comments last night in Cooperstown. I am testifying on behalf of the Northeast Agribusiness and Feed Alliance. This is a trade association with every single feed manufacturing company in New York and New England, as well as numerous suppliers to the feed industry. And I also run a feed business with 4 feed mills and 80 employees. I'm going to touch on 2 things: ag trade and research in our university system. First, thank you for your trip to Ottawa. That was a great step, and we certainly support NAFTA and free and fair trade. And I know you guys were addressing some of the challenges with the fair part of our trade with Canada, or their trade with us. Specifically, I really want to hone in on ag research. One of the primary roles of the federal government as it pertains to our ag industry is to invest in basic research through our land grant universities. The next Farm Bill should prioritize ag research. Federal investment, in contrast to private sector investment, is crucial to maintaining the competitive edge that we currently enjoy. Our population continues to grow, and we need to figure out the best way to feed our ever-growing population. The Cornell University in specific, but the SUNY system also has received less funding for the research they try to do, and therefore that translates into less researchers, less professors at the universities. The Northeast Agribusiness and Feed Alliance launched a private fundraiser, and we came up with $1 million of private money that we donated to Cornell University to fund 2 research positions. That's how strongly we felt that this was lacking. The first position has been filled just this summer, 4th of July, I believe, and the second position is in the interview phase and will be filled, I'm sure, by the end of the year. I thank you very much for coming here and listening, and I believe that we will again have a successful Farm Bill going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dugan. We'll ask Harold Hovell to come forward on deck, and this is speaking now is Denise Lloyd, a dairy farmer from Middleburg, New York.
Good morning. My name is Denise Lloyd. My husband and my 2 sons and I own and operate a small dairy farm about 10 miles south of here in the Schoharie Fertile Valley. We milk about 150 cows and are growing all of our forages and some of our grains. We have diversified our operation of commercial milk sales by growing additional hay and corn, and custom work and merchandising genetics through the sale of embryos and livestock. We pride ourselves in producing quality milk, crops, and genetics to maximize our income that is used to supplement the milk sales. We ship our milk to Agrimark Cooperative. We are involved with the co-op. My husband David is a voting representative. Our younger son Greg is a young cooperator, and myself as Agrimark's Legislation and Education Committee. We feel it's important to be proactive in shaping our destiny, so to speak, or in as much as we can control. When the 2014 Farm Bill was legislated, we took part in the Margin Protection Program for dairy. We understood that this was a voluntary risk management program that would offer protection to us when the difference between the all milk price and the average feed cost, or margin, falls below a certain dollar amount selected by the farmer. This program is similar to another form of risk management, crop insurance, which we understand and participate. After much research, including utilizing projections done by Agrimark's economist, Bob Wellington, we decided to purchase a higher coverage level of $7.50 per hundredweight. In a tight year, low milk price, we chose to purchase the insurance. We paid $7,000 in premium to provide the safety net should milk prices drop even further.
In 2015, the milk price continued to drop, and the MPP would have triggered payment to those who purchased the insurance. Had the program worked as we were led to believe, we would have had considerably more dollars added to our bottom line. I feel very much duped by the federal government, thinking that we were being proactive and hedging our losses by participating in a program. Instead, we just paid out more money and increased our loss in our dairy business. We feel that the government should have paid out monies to the producers and adjusted the program indicators the following year. We abide by, or actually required, to follow all guidelines and strings attached to participate in any federal program, but are left with no recourse when the government misleads the farmer. How do we create a program for dairy?
Thank you, Ms. Lloyd. On deck, we're going to ask Paul Molesky to come forward. This is Harold Hubble from Katona, New York.
My name is Harold Hovel. I'm here to speak in favor of the Pets and Women's Safety Act, H.R. 909, which is under consideration for inclusion in the Farm Bill. This bill will not only protect many women by altering the prevalence of domestic violence, but would also protect many children. Every day, 3 women are killed by an intimate partner, and over 9,000 experience severe violence. Every day, 5 children are killed by domestic abusers, and more than 7,000 are severely mistreated. If there are animals present in the home, they are very likely being battered as well, which is one method abusers use to terrorize and control women and children. Even worse, domestic violence is a training ground for future violence. In a third of these domestic violence situations, the children learn to harm or kill animals also, following the example set by the abuser, and are in danger of becoming batterers and child abusers themselves as adults. It is this negative pattern of domestic and future domestic violence that the PAWS Act, H.R. 909, has a significant chance of altering. To break the cycle of abuse and safeguard both women and children, it is vital that they be able to escape these dangerous situations. However, nearly half of battered women remain in dangerous situations out of fear for the safety of their pets. Most battered women's shelters do not allow the victim to bring their pets with them, giving the woman a Sophie's choice of abandoning her pets to possible torture and death, or staying behind to protect them as best as possible. Today, perhaps 5% of shelters allow pets, the rest do not. The PAWS Act would help this situation by encouraging shelters to accept pets by providing grant money to defray the costs that are involved. The grants could total up to $3 million a year, a small price to pay for saving women's and children's lives and helping to break the cycle of domestic violence. The bill would also encourage legal entities to include pets in protective restraining orders and provides penalties for interstate violations of existing protective orders involving pets, as well as providing penalties for stalking violations involving pets. By safeguarding the lives and safety of women and children as well as pets, the PAWS Act could be a significant weapon against domestic violence, and I urge you to give it favorable consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hovel. We're going to ask Sophie Ackoff to come forward to be on deck, and speaking now is Paul Molesky, Jr. from New York Farm Bureau.
Good morning, Chairman Conway and the rest of the Ag Committee. My name is Paul Molesky, and I am a dairy farmer. And as a farmer, it is my daily mission to produce food, but another unfortunate daily occurrence is that 1 in 8 individuals in America struggle with food security. Even more disheartening is that 1 in 6 households with children face food insecurity. Now, there are many organizations in the private sector, charities, nonprofits, and religious groups that work tirelessly day in and day out to provide relief, but many of these organizations are stretching their resources thin and only able to provide a fraction of what the hungry in our communities need. Farmers across America are extremely generous as well. and have a habit of donating farmed, fresh food products to organizations in their communities. Sometimes, however, these measures cannot cover the entire need. The SNAP program is an important safety net. Hunger is a complex issue that requires collaboration between many interested parties, nonprofits and government, and yes, of course, farmers. The Farm Bill contains two major parts, SNAP and the other farm programs. Now, the American farmer is one of the most productive and efficient in the world, and the farm programs contained in the Farm Bill work to improve the efficiency of production and safety of the food chain, all while keeping the cost of food affordable. This is an integral part of combating food insecurity. Let's face it, it's impossible to solve our nation's hunger problems if we neglect the farmers. Farmers are an essential part of the solution. For this reason, the Farm Bill must include both SNAP and the farm programs together in one bill. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Molesky. We're going to ask Brian Gilchrist to be on deck to come forward. This is Sophie Akoff from the National Young Farmers Coalition.
Hello, I'm Sophie Akoff with the National Young Farmers Coalition. I'm the National Field Director. We have a grassroots network of young farmers all across the country with 36 chapters in 26 states, and 4 of our chapters have sent farmers here today. I'm a young farmer myself. I'm working to start an organic vegetable operation in Kingston, New York with 2 business partners. And finding affordable farmland has been our biggest challenge, and it's the greatest challenge that the National Young Farmers Coalition sees across the country. Land in the Hudson Valley sells for much more than working farmers can afford. New York City residents come here looking for second home and estate properties and can easily outbid farmers like myself for land. USDA provides critical loans for young farmers, including direct farm ownership loans, but changes must be made to ensure working farmers have a chance to compete for farmland. As my colleague Holly mentioned, the current $300,000 limit for these loans makes them insufficient for many farmers in an area of high competitiveness and real estate prices like the Hudson Valley. NYFC recommends raising this limit to $500,000 and pegging it to regional farmland at inflation rates. This will also help meet the realities of farm real estate prices. Congress should also ensure that target participation rates are being met across all FSA loan programs, particularly as demand outpaces supply. After years of searching for farmland, 8 months in particular, we are really lucky to have found a piece of land that's being sold at its agricultural value. It's in a floodplain, so that helps. It's going for around $3,500 an acre, which is what we can afford, as opposed to $20,000 or more per acre, which is what we've been seeing across the Hudson Valley. Because so much farmland is at risk of development or being sold to non-farmers, conservation easements are an important tool for making sure farmland stays affordable in the hands of working farmers. I urge the committee to increase funding for working farm easements through the NRCS Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, ACEP, and prioritize funding for easement projects that incorporate affordability provisions and ensure that protected farmland stays in the hands of working farmers. Fortunately, my partners and I can use FSA loans to purchase our dream farm. But in competitive real estate markets like ours, the FSA loan making process often takes too long for farmers. Non-farmers with pre-approved mortgages or cash bids can easily outbid working farmers for farmland. The current application process can take longer than 30 days, and funds may not be available for months. Likewise, the current process requires farmers to turn in application forms in person. To address these barriers, the USDA must modernize the way it conducts business by moving its application and servicing systems online, streamline the application process, and create a system for pre-approval for farm loans. Secretary Perdue has made clear his intention to modernize USDA's customer service, and Congress should use this farm bill to provide him with funding and statute to do so. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Akoff. On deck, we'll ask Barb Damon to come forward. This is Brian Gilchrist. He's the Executive Director of Cornell Cooperative Extension of Washington, Fulton, and Montgomery counties.
Good morning, Chairman Conaway and members of the committee.
Committee. I'm Brian Gilchrist, Executive Director of Cornell Cooperative Extension, Washington, Fulton, and Montgomery counties, and a third-generation beef farmer. In New York State, we are lucky to have a strong and vibrant cooperative extension system. The strength of the system is rooted in the $12 million of federal Smith-Lever funding, which then leverages an additional $77 million in county funding and grants and contracts. Together, these capacity funds support an extension system that branches out into every county of New York State and New York City, allowing local educators to serve as boots on the ground, bringing relevant research-based information and education to all residents. In many areas of New York State, this means working with both ag producers and with consumers. Cornell Cooperative Extension educators are providing locally tailored, research-based information, programs, and technical assistance to dairy, livestock, field crops, vegetables, and fruit producers. Educators collaborate with Cornell faculty, agribusiness professionals, agencies, and farmers to address issues impacting their industry. Together with producers, Cooperative Extension contributes to the viability and profitability of farms, the economic well-being of New York State, and a safe, secured food system for all. Recognizing that a strong ag and food system depends on consumers, Cooperative Extension works to help consumers better understand agriculture. Educators provide programs and information that help consumers understand issues like food labeling, ag production methods and practices, and where to purchase local foods. Information like this helps people make informed choices for themselves and their families. Lastly, Cooperative Extension recognizes that a strong agriculture economy depends on individuals interested in pursuing agricultural careers. 4-H youth development educators work with teachers to deliver classroom-based ag education lessons that meet learning standards and provide opportunities in which hundreds of New York State youth become more aware of ag career opportunities, learn about academic requirements for professional positions available in the various ag businesses, and participate in seminars and guided tours of ag facilities. While not every American will be a farmer, every American eats and is therefore connected to agriculture. America must have farmers that are efficient, profitable, able to embrace and adopt new technologies, and to cope with changing markets, weather, and climate. And we must have consumers well informed about the ag and food system. Cornell Cooperative Extension is working towards this goal, but we need the capacity funds to do so. We urge you to make sure that the next Farm Bill maintains or increases federal Smith-Lever funds to Extension so that we may continue our work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gilchrist. On deck, we'll ask Bob Hefner to come forward. This is Barb Damon, owner of Damon Farm in St. Johnsville, New York.
Good morning. You can hear me. Members of the House Ag Committee and Chairman Conway, glad you're here. I am owner with my husband of Damon Farm, which is comprised of 640 acres of prime New York real estate along the Mohawk River located in Montgomery County. In prior years, I was able to call myself a dairy farmer. That changed this year. The processor at Elmhurst we had been shipping our milk to for over 17 years decided to downsize and cut us off. We received a letter this spring that they said they would not be extending our contract and that they would cease picking up our milk when our contract expired September 1st. From the time we received that letter this past spring until this current date, I have called milk plants, their market administrator in Boston, as well as Albany, and my current congressman, to no avail. We were forced to sell our milking herd on August 30th. It was one of the saddest days of my life. Can you believe it? You'd think I'd be relieved. The milk our cows produced was high quality and our cows were healthy. Still, we were not able to find a market. It seems to be a common knowledge that there are farms out there whose milk is not good quality, yet they continue to be part of the milk supply. How does that happen when there are checks and balances in place to make sure every farm in New York follows clean and wholesome guidelines? I am angry and disheartened with the last Farm Bill. The new Farm Bill needs to present a strong foundation to truly support the dairy farmer in this country. The milk prices since January 2015 have been unsatisfactory, unprofitable, and unrealistic. The entire milk pricing system needs a reset. In this day and age, I cannot name any other company that has paid this month for last month's product. The main point I want to leave with you is that I need a milk market. Cows are cheap right now, so I can buy some more cows if I need to. And I have current obligations like a mortgage, like farm credit, school taxes, and county taxes. And contrary to my appearance, I'm not quite ready to retire yet. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Damon. On deck, we'll ask Rebecca Lair to come forward. This is Bob Hefner from the Council of State Governments.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I am Bob Hefner. I'm here with my consulting partner, Tara Sad, and we are both former New Hampshire legislators and both former chairs of the New Hampshire House Agriculture Committee. But we're here today representing the Eastern region of the Council of State Governments. Tara and I are the agriculture policy consultants to the Council of State Governments in the East. Our membership represents the 11 northeastern states from Maryland to Maine, also the 2 territories down in the Caribbean, which just had their agriculture industry wiped out. We, this year, held some conference calls, several conference calls with our membership. Now, the membership are generally state legislators. On our committee, they are agriculture legislators. They're the agriculture policy makers for their states. And we had conference calls to determine what we would, in the Northeast as a region, would like to see in the next Farm Bill. And we've done that. We've got a resolution that we're going to pass to you today that covers several things. I would also say in August at our annual meeting, we had a staffer from the U.S. Senate Ag Committee come up and speak to us about the Farm Bill. So we got some new information at that time. But things that are important to us is we have our small farms here in the Northeast, and specialty crops are especially important. Dairy is very important to us. Conservation programs are important to us, and I'm leaving out a bunch of others. But I guess my message to the Agriculture Committee is please don't forget our small farmers in the Northeast. What's in that Farm Bill is important to us as the big guys out west. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hefner. On deck, we'll ask Gretchen Main to come forward. This is Rebecca Lair from the Food Bank of Central New York, Advocacy Resource Manager.
Good morning. Thank you for hosting this listening session and giving us the opportunity to share our stories with you. My name is Becky Lair, and I work at the Food Bank of Central New York, which serves 11 counties throughout central and northern New York. We provide 32,000 meals a day with our network of 364 partner agencies. We've been asking those individuals and families turning to our network and receiving those meals I just mentioned to write messages that we can share with their members of Congress. I'd like to take a moment today to share those stories and a few messages with you. Emily from Union Springs wrote, "I never thought I would be in a situation where food pantries would help me. I've always donated but never used. With work trouble and a newborn, life has been tough. I can't tell you how much it means to me that I have somewhere that allows me to feed my family. Thank you." The last message is from Don, who lives in the Auburn area. "The hardest thing in the world is to look your children in the eye and tell them, I don't have any food. Been there, done that." It's critical to keep individuals like Don and Emily in mind while we discuss the next Farm Bill and the programs within the nutrition title giving them a hand up, such as SNAP and TFAP. While SNAP is a critical component for many families in making ends meet, we know that benefits typically last less than 2.5 weeks, and not all of the food insecure households accessing our network are eligible for SNAP. We've also heard from these individuals that when their SNAP benefits are cut or eliminated, they have to turn to their local food pantry more frequently. Our network is already stretched meeting the current need, and the prospect of additional cuts to SNAP is frankly terrifying. Another program central to accomplishing our food bank's mission is TFAP. TFAP provides highly nutritious food that our food bank pairs with items we purchase along with donated product and distribute out to our network of partner agencies. We distributed over 3.5 million pounds of TFAP commodities during our most recent fiscal year, helping to prevent empty shelves and ensure no one is ever turned away due to a lack of food. Through our retail partnership program, we keep millions of pounds of fresh, nutritious foods out of the waste stream and provide it to our friends and neighbors in need. The Farm Bill must protect and strengthen the national commitment to reducing hunger. We urge you to invest in and protect programs such as TFAP, SNAP, and funding to strengthen food donation programs to reduce food waste. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lair. On deck, we ask Suzanne Kane to come forward. This is Gretchen Main, a dairy farmer from Waterville, New York.
Yeah, I'm actually a semi-retired dairy farmer. Our cows went 2 years ago. I was the other half of the workforce, became ill, spent 23 days in Albany Med. We probably still would have kept the cows, but we knew the price of milk was going to crash again, and we took that ride in 2009, did not want to do it again. In regards to the 2018 Farm Bill, things need to be changed. Obviously, the so-called insurance safety net was nothing but a scam that farmers paid into and received nothing in return. Most of their insurance money went straight to the federal government's checking account. What we need is a milk pricing system that controls overproduction and yet lets a dairy farmer make a living. We simply cannot survive on $15 milk that costs us $23 to produce. And we must stop the overproduction of the large mega farms that just keep getting bigger and bigger and putting the small family farmer out of business. There's a farm about 40 miles from us that's milking 3,000 cows and expects to be milking 7,000 by spring. These are the farms that put out my friends, relatives, and neighbors out of business. I urge you to take another look at the Federal Milk Market Improvement Act, which addresses overproduction, imports, and cost of production. It would be totally funded by farmers with no cost to the federal government. If it had been passed in 2014, we would not have the huge surpluses that we have today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Main. On deck, we have Carol Sullivan. Ask her to come forward. This is Susan Kane, Unbridled Thoroughbred Foundation.
Good morning. My name is Susan Kane. I'm a humane educator. I'm a former thoroughbred racehorse breeder and owner, and the founder of the Unbridled Thoroughbred Foundation. And I'm here to express my concern and perspective on the slaughter of horses. Currently, approximately 130,000 domestically bred, purposefully used American equine are exported across borders for slaughter, primarily for human consumption. These horses are laden with drugs throughout their lifetime that are currently prohibited in farm animals who are also raised for human consumption. And I would like to query the committee as to why horses are exempt from being regulated as food animals when we know they contain controlled substances that are known to be toxic in the human food chain. We're shipping them to Canada because of the lax labeling laws in Canada. They are processed in Canada and shipped to the European Union, labeled as products of Canada. I can tell you as a former thoroughbred breeder and owner that horses off of the racetrack, loaded with clenbuterol, bendamustine, among the most notable drugs, are loaded onto kill trucks, go across our borders, straight into slaughterhouses, butchered and shipped to tables in the European Union, and they are also being found back in the American food chain. This information is well documented. I would urge you to consider in the bill going forward that you regulate horses as food animals, that their drug records from the day they are born are mandated to be verifiable, to be transparent, and to be used to determine their eligibility for slaughter. If they're not eligible for slaughter, there are many options to euthanize horses. And I do not understand how in a room full of people who follow the rules and the regulations to raise wholesome and safe food that we exempt horses from regulation. It seems like unfair competition to the farmer, and furthermore, with the knowledge we have about horses being consumed by people, what does it say about our standards of food safety? And what does it say to the farmers who do raise wholesome and safe food and follow the rules and regulations? So I thank you for listening to me and urge you to consider that going forward.
Thank you, Ms. Kane. On deck, we ask Kathy Arnold to come forward. This is Carol Sullivan, Pro-Ag Secretary.
Congressmen and women, I'd like to yield my 2 minutes to a dairy farmer of New York State, Robin Fitch, please.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you for being here today. Many times we have tried to speak to you, and many times we have been shut down as the small farmers, so I do appreciate this opportunity today. I'd also like to say we'd like the opportunity when we call your offices, even though we may not be in your district, as I am in Congressman Tenney's office, district, to please take our calls, because agriculture is statewide, it's not a district. So please take our calls and have your ag aides speak to us when we do call, please. I work with farmers across this country. They call me and say, what do? We cannot feed our own families. We cannot pay our bills. There's tears on the other end of these phone conference calls, and nobody's hearing their voices. The small farmer, the big farmer, we all need a fair price for our milk. Everything else is great, all the other programs and assistance, but unless we get a fair price for our milk, nothing else matters. You're shutting our family farms down by giving us a 40% pay decrease. What are we supposed to do? I can't call Farm Credit and say, well, guess what? I lost 40% of my milk check this month, so you're gonna get 40% less on my mortgage payment. Or my feed company, who happens to be here and spoke today, and call him and say, hey, you're taking 40% less today because I got 40% less. My costs continue to go up, feed goes up, fuel goes up, and oh well, it doesn't matter, my milk prices don't go up. How do people justify this? You can give this to an elementary school and explain the situation, and they'd say, that doesn't make sense. So why doesn't it make sense in Washington, D.C.? Why is it falling on deaf ears that we need a fair price for our milk? And yes, I do support the Federal Milk Marketing Improvement Act, because it is something that takes care of overproduction and gives me a fair price for my milk. And I know that it may cost me more than it might cost Joe Blow, and so cost of production isn't the same for everybody, but at least it gives us a fair chance. I have a 26-year-old son who would love to be the next generation. And I have a daughter who is 14. I have 8 grandkids that live right there on the farm. And we have the opportunity for this next generation who knows what it's like to work 16 to 18 hours. Doesn't matter, 365 days a year. The kid has taken 4 days off with never a paycheck. Over all these years, you ask how many college kids are willing to do that? How many 26-year-olds? Not many. You need your family farm kids to be your next generation. You need that workforce to feed this country safe food supply. You look across the table at your kids and you tell them, guess what? We can't afford to pay the bills, and if it keeps on going this way, we're gonna close the doors. You look at the white face that just drops of the son who's worked day and night.
Can you conclude your comments, please?
Yes, I can. And see the tears in your kids' eyes, because you know what? They're not the local car dealer. Well, mom and dad's business is going under. We still have a home. Guess what? We lose it all. So I urge you, please, to really consider paying us a fair price for our milk. We're willing to do the work and give you a safe product. Thank you.
On deck, we ask Robin Fitch to come forward. Okay, there you go. We ask Patricia Valusik to come forward on deck. This is Kathy Arnold from the Organic Dairy Producers Association.
Thank you. I'm an organic dairy farmer and the policy committee chair for the Northeast Organic Dairy Producers Alliance, otherwise known as NODPA, that represents organic farmers from Maine to Pennsylvania. I want to highlight 2 areas that are driving the current surplus of organic milk and the resulting loss of access to markets and the very significant drop in pay price. Because of a formatting error in OFPA, which was the organic authorizing law, and a subsequent interpretation by the National Organic Program, some operations in the West have been allowed to continuously transition conventional young stock rather than raise young stock organically from the last third of gestation, as the rest of us must do. This loophole has allowed rapid expansion of very large organic herds. NADPA urges the deletion of the transition allowance for dairy herds from OFPA through Farm Bill language. The organic dairy industry has reached a maturity that it can supply all the replacement livestock needed to meet the projected expansion of the organic dairy market, and we no longer need to allow this transition of conventional livestock. NADPA's sister organizations in the Midwest and West also support this position. The other area is the lack of enforcement of the pasture rule, which requires a minimum intake from pasture over the grazing season. Multi-thousand cow operations in the West show on paper that their cows make the minimum intake, but those of us who practice grazing know that there is no way that operations with thousands of cows in one location can actually be achieving the required pasture intake. In order to help rectify this breach, NADPA urges the establishment of a professional license for organic certification inspectors and staff. Organic dairy operations with over 500 cows must then be restricted to approved certifiers that use inspectors and certification staff who are licensed in certifying organic dairies to NOP regulations. Perhaps this is something that could be considered in the Farm Bill. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Arnold. On deck is Elizabeth Pickard. This is Patricia Volusic, retired federal employee.
Good morning. I'm Patricia Volusic. I'm a retired federal employee, having worked for Congressman Hinchy, who is a champion for companion animals at both the state and federal level. I have reviewed and fully support H.R. 1406, which was referred to the Agriculture Committee. It amends the Animal Welfare Act to prohibit the domestic slaughter, trade, and import and export of dogs and cats for human consumption. I have discussed this bill with numerous friends and relatives, and they fully support it as well, as I am sure the majority of Americans would. The people I talked to were horrified when they saw pictures of foreign markets where dogs were jammed into cages, waiting for slaughter, and to add to the horror, some were actually tortured before being killed for meat. We never want that sickening scenario to occur in this country. Sadly and shockingly, according to my research, 44 states actually do allow for the slaughter of cats and dogs for human consumption. It is not clear that there are any entities that actually engage in such activities, but such behaviors must be outlawed federally, so the possibility is precluded. This bill would establish federal penalties for any violations of this act. Violators would be subject to imprisonment for up to a year, or could be fined up to $2,500 or both. Hopefully, that would be a deterrent that would prevent the involvement of individuals with such odious acts. I and numerous other Americans urge the committee to include H.R. 1406 in the larger Farm Bill. We would also like to thank and acknowledge our representative, John Faso, as a co-sponsor of this legislation, and express our appreciation for his support. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Ms. Volusic. On deck will be Anita Paley. This is Elizabeth Pickard, a farmer at Twin Oaks Dairy.
Good morning. My name is Liz Pickard. I'm a member of the National Young Farmers Coalition. I'm a farm worker. I work at Twin Oaks Dairy in Truxton, New York, where we milk 120 certified organic cows and farm about 740 acres of pasture hay and a small amount of cropland. I'm also one of the first enrollees in the whole state of the Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship Program, the nation's first and only apprenticeship in agriculture to be registered with the Department of Labor. I'm a first-generation farmer. I did not grow up on a farm, but when I was a young adult, I was lucky to know myself well enough to know that I wanted a job outside. That was 12 years ago, and I've been working on farms since then, building the skills and knowledge that I need to someday run my own operation. Recently, I spoke with a loan officer at Farm Credit, where I was informed that due to my student loan debt and lack of capital, I did not qualify to receive funding. Meanwhile, the cost of living goes up and the farmland around me gets more and more expensive, more heavily developed, and continually consolidated into the hands of fewer and larger farmers. I'm asking that the 2008 Farm Bill support the Young Farmers Agenda, especially reducing the burden of student debt and increasing access to land and capital through, for example, matched funding IDA savings programs. And I also ask for your support in adding farming to the list of public service occupations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pickard. On deck would be Mackenzie Worrell. This is Anita Paley from the Food Bank Association of New York State.
Good afternoon. On behalf of 5,000 member agencies and the 2.5 million hungry in New York State that we regularly support with emergency food each year, the Food Bank Association of New York State would like to go on record as opposing the House Budget Committee's 2018 budget resolution. We oppose this budget containing at least $203 billion in required cuts to mandatory programs like SNAP, TFAP, and CSFP, all of which who provide crucial benefits to children, seniors, military and veteran families, the underemployed, and the unemployed. Specifically, we oppose the call for $10 billion in required cuts for the agriculture budget, with an additional $150 billion in cuts secured by block granting the SNAP program. Giving control of SNAP to the states will not keep SNAP responsive. SNAP currently reacts off the need. Right now, SNAP is responding to disasters as it did in Hurricane Sandy. And if those funds are handed over to the states, the funds become rigid and less effective. In addition to losing responsiveness from SNAP, New York State will see a reduction in meals, complete loss of benefits for many already struggling New Yorkers, and over the next 10 years, this budget plan could slash more than 4.5 billion meals. The program moved $4.9 billion in food benefits to New York, generating $8.3 billion in economic activity. SNAP expenditures are estimated to increase economic activity by $1.79 billion. Locally, this equates to every $5 in SNAP benefits generating as much as $9 of economic activity. In 2017, New York is missing 448 million meals, and this would add more to the equation, moving New York State to an increase in missing meals. Block granting would clearly hurt the hard-working, already stressed charitable organizations, and we are hoping that TFAP, the Commodity Purchasing Program, which affords the food banks the opportunity to distribute American-grown food to low-income Americans, will stay stabilized. Nearly 20% of the 176 million pounds of food distributed through our member network comes from TFAP. We are hoping that you will continue to support SNAP, move SNAP from being block granted to the states, and we thank you for the opportunity for our voice to be heard.
Thank you, Ms. Paley. On deck is Sarah Simon. Speaking now is Mackenzie Worrell, the Harvest New York Program Coordinator for Cornell Cooperative Extension. Mackenzie.
Good afternoon. Again, I'm Mackenzie. I'm with Cornell Cooperative Extension's Harvest New York team. I'd like to talk to you guys about the Smith-Lever funding. Harvest New York is a team of regional extension specialists working to expand and enhance Cornell Cooperative Extension's regional agricultural programs to spur agricultural economic development in New York State. Smith-Lever funds provide critical support for the work that our extension associations do in every county of New York State and even New York City. Due to Smith-Lever dollars, Harvest New York was able to hire 2 new specialists, today was the announcement, to move to working with urban agriculture in New York City. We appreciate the amount of funds that Smith-Lever has contributed to these positions. There's agriculture in New York City? What? No, there really is. We have regional agriculture production specialists throughout the state. We've always searched for an agricultural economic connection to the city, and here's our new way to do it. Our specialists will be able to help with agricultural sector, agricultural goods, getting agricultural goods to the largest food market on the East Coast. Food must be safe for our consumers. Extension has the opportunity to work with producers and processors on food safety training and becoming compliant with federal laws and regulations. Due to the vast knowledge of extension specialists, producers can ensure a safe,
local food product for all of our consumers. We as Extension are proud of what we do. We work hard to bring safe food to consumers. We work with all producers in all communities. Smith Lever funding helps us towards our goals of a stronger economic future, especially in agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Worrell. On deck, we ask Ann Rogan to come forward. This is Sarah Simon speaking now. She's the farm director at Common Ground Farm.
Good morning. I'm the farm director at Common Ground Farm in the Hudson Valley in Beacon, New York. I'm also a member of the Hudson Valley Young Farmers Coalition, a chapter of the National Young Farmers Coalition. My farm is part of a nonprofit organization that focuses on food access and education, including running 2 farmers markets in the Mid-Hudson region and partnering with public schools in farm-to-school efforts. We grow mixed vegetables on 7 acres, and to fulfill the mission of food access, we donate half of what we grow to emergency food outlets and sell discounted produce at mobile markets in Beacon and Newburgh. In terms of food access, we have seen the value of SNAP not only for low-income families, but for farmers at our markets, where we accept SNAP thanks to New York State's free EBT equipment programs. We need SNAP to feed our low-income families and people, many of whom are dealing with disabilities or job loss, but also it is important to recognize the value the SNAP program can return to market farmers, not only Walmart, especially in major cities like the green markets in New York City. As a young farmer, I want to urge the committee to protect farmland for the next generation by strengthening conservation easement programs. Here in the Hudson Valley, I see many of my peers struggle to find quality, affordable land near their markets. The only way that my farm can exist 10 minutes from the city of Beacon is because it is on protected land. And I want to see opportunities like this continue to be possible for the new generation. Student loan debt is another major issue facing young people in our country, and it is particularly challenging for young people hoping to enter farming, given the low wages, steep learning curve, and capital needs for people not born into family farms. This fall, I had an employee leave the farm and enter season early to take a job at a literary agency, and the reason she gave was that she could not consider a career in farming with the amount of student loans that she has to pay off. As we know, farming is a valuable and rewarding profession, and it is important to address some of the barriers to entry that keep people, in order to keep young people in agriculture, by allowing farmers to refinance their loans with the USDA or creating repayment programs for young farmers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. On deck, we'll ask Don Smyers to come forward. Presently speaking is Dr. Ann Rogan representing SNAP.
Thank you, and good afternoon. The 2018 Farm Bill offers Congress the opportunity to improve the diets and health of the poorest Americans by changing the foods that can be purchased with the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. The changes that are required will improve the diets of the most vulnerable Americans by more closely aligning their food choices to recommendations of the U.S. Dietary Guidelines and the My Plate recommendations. Both the U.S. Dietary Guidelines and the My Plate address the needs for Americans to consume more fruits and vegetables, more whole and less processed grains and cereals, nuts, seeds, legumes, and less processed meat and dairy. Moreover, modifying the foods available in SNAP can boost local rural economies by incentivizing the purchase from local small farms, which can improve the economic well-being of farm communities throughout the United States. In 2008, the USDA announced the Healthy Initiatives pilot programs, which encouraged the purchase of fruit and vegetables through financial incentives. Evidence from the Massachusetts HIP showed that incentivizing the purchase of fruits and vegetables increased consumption by 26%. This increase in fruit and vegetable consumption adopted for a lifetime reduces healthcare costs by decreasing the incidence of type 2 diabetes and stroke. Expanding the HIP pilots to all states with an emphasis on foods purchased at farmers markets without added sugar would strengthen the focus of SNAP, as would be including domestically grown, fresh, frozen, or canned fruit and vegetable purchases at supermarkets. Similarly, foods made with 100% whole grain can be identified and incentivized to provide and encourage the consumption of these foods. Milk and meat, legumes, seeds, and nuts, all regionally produced, should be included in an incentive program for SNAP to encourage the growth of small regional farm economies. The Women, Infant, and Children WIC program already provides a model which can be used as the basis of the change for the SNAP benefits. Structuring the 2018 Farm Bill to support local farm economies through changes in SNAP benefits will result in improved health of SNAP participants and decreased taxpayer resentment of SNAP entitlements. Remember, good food is not a cost, but it's an investment in our health. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rogan. Mr. Chairman, our final speaker today is Don Smyers. Mr. Smyers is the Executive Director for Cornell Cooperative Extension for Schoharie and Otsego counties.
Well, Chairman Conaway, an honored guest, we appreciate your presence here today. I am the Executive Director, as Tim Moore has said, of Cornell Cooperative Extension of Schoharie and Otsego counties, which includes this county and the county immediately to the west of us, Otsego. Primarily both counties historically have been major dairy producers. I don't want to repeat what my colleagues have said about the absolute necessity for the Smith-Lever capacity funding, which is why I'm here today to speak. Smith-Lever does a lot for cooperative extension beyond the teams, which provides the technical expertise that we need for a changing New York agriculture. There is yet another reason why extension and Smith-Lever funding is ever so critical. If we are going to sustain a rural New York which has opportunities for employment, we need a strong agriculture. And to that end, I think it would be logical to say that we have to maintain a strong presence educationally to provide technical, sometimes highly technical information and assistance to producers. To that end, then, I'm going to ask that you would continue to support Smith-Lever funding in the Farm Bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smyers. And for those of you that didn't have a chance to share your comments today, I just want to remind you that our committee certainly wants to hear your comments, and the address is houseaglistens@mail.house.gov. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Tim. Appreciate your moderating our hearings today. We started the conversation, or started this listening, asking you to give us your comments, and I want to thank each and every one of the folks who did. Thank you for being blunt and respectful, though, in your positions. I hope it wasn't lost on you that there was not one speaker who requested a cut in a program. All the speakers asked for more money, and many asked for flat funding, but no one asked for less money. And so my colleagues and I have a difficult path ahead of us to try to meet all the legitimate needs that were expressed this morning. Very heartfelt, and thank you for sharing those stories. The current Farm Bill is always a work in progress. We put it in place in 5 years, and we try to decide what's working, what's not working. We use these listening sessions to hear from you what didn't work. Obviously, dairy has not worked coming out of that last Farm Bill. My colleagues and I are committed to addressing that and addressing the other things in the 14 Farm Bill that didn't work as well as they did. But the current Farm Bill, the current scheme, you can love it or hate it, but based principally on the hard work, sweat equity, risk-taking of the American producer, and yes, a reliant on a safety net, provides the American consumer the most abundant and safest and affordable food and fiber supply of any nation in the world. That's not an accident. That comes by a lot of hard work. As we approach this next Farm Bill, the family that I'm going to be thinking the most of is that the study you saw recently where almost 50% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. That's the family I'm going to be thinking about as we move forward. The top 20% of the wage earners in this country spend more on food than the bottom 20% makes in disposable income. So as we look at all these programs, the filter that will be first on my mind is what will this do to the cost of food? Why are we doing it? Will it help with those consumers out there who every time they go to the grocery store, every time they go to a restaurant, they pay less for their food than anybody else in the world? They don't know that, and they certainly don't know why. And so every one of us in this room that eats ought to be an advocate for a strong farm policy, a strong farm bill that allows us to continue to do the things we've done. Every SNAP voice out there said they need more money, or they certainly didn't want the cost of food to go up to make those SNAP benefits go even shorter than they already do. And so these are the struggles that we're going to have as we look forward to the next farm bill. We're committed to getting it done on time. The previous examples where the farm bill expires, we have short-term extensions, we have threats of permanent law, all of that drama is totally unnecessary. My colleagues and I are committed to getting this thing done before the current one expires so that, right, wrong, or different, producers will know what they'll have to deal with the next year, the next 5 years, and their bankers and their lenders and the producers themselves will know what will be the program. With respect to SNAP, we will make meaningful work requirement changes, but none of us intend to cut SNAP. That was not the position we've taken for the last 2 years and 9 months. GT leads that committee right now. We've done over 18 hearings on SNAP to decide what's working, what's not working, and not one of those hearings did any of us talk about saving money or not spending money that shouldn't be spent. We spent the entire time talking about let's get the policy right. If we understand what the right policy is, then we can see whether they can afford it or not. But the first step is to get that policy right, and that's what we've been trying to do. And under GT's leadership, that's where we're going to be headed with this next farm bill. So we appreciate all of you coming this morning. Last month, we celebrated the 230th anniversary of our Constitution, a document that was put together by good men who came to Philadelphia with the idea of fine-tuning the Articles of Confederation. James Madison and some others had a different idea, and after extensive behind closed doors work, they came up with the current Constitution that we have. Benjamin Franklin was asked when he emerged from that, what have you given us, good doctor, a monarchy or a republic? And he looked the lady in the eye and said, a republic, madam, if you can keep it. That's a pretty evocative phrase. It is an ongoing challenge to each and every one of us to keep this republic. Self-governing people keep republics. And John Adams wrote that only a moral and religious people can self-govern because amoral and immoral people can't self-govern. They have to have a different scheme. So if we're going to be among those continuing keepers of the republic, if we're going to be able to keep it, then we've got to be that moral and religious people. As I look at our country, I'm deeply concerned that we are losing that moral high ground, that moral authority to be able to self-govern. And each of us have got to take up the challenge of reclaiming it. These gentlemen and I and Claudia took an oath of office when we every 2 years. Several of us have taken the oath when we joined the military to defend and protect this Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I'm going to ask each one of you to decide for yourself, what are you willing to do to protect this republic? What are you willing to do to defend this Constitution? We've got good men and women in uniform today who've put their lives behind that particular oath that I'm proud to have taken and my colleagues are proud to have taken. I'm going to ask you to think about what you're willing to risk. What are you willing to risk to defend it? Will you risk the ridicule and the issues that come along now with being able to stand up for those values and truths that built this country and sustained this country? I live a code. I live the Judeo-Christian model. Jesus Christ is my personal Savior. I try to live that code every day. Some days are better than others, but you have to live a code as well. You have to be among that group that stands up and says, I will be a moral religious person that can self-govern, that will provide the necessary backdrop in order to defend this republic and protect it going forward for future generations of Americans. Inherent in all of that is a people who are fed and fed healthily and a production, agriculture, and a rural America that backstops all of those work. So think about it from time to time. What is it you're willing to risk to defend the republic? Because after all, it is a republic, madam, if you can keep it. God bless each one of you. God bless Texas. And God bless the United States of America. Good to be with you this morning.